Why do you keep doing this, Ryan?
And then, so that's where I got the lesson to never apologize.
Never. And if you're listening right now...
Really, Ryan? Come on. I liked you, Ryan. I'm so frustrated by all this. Why did you get yourself so involved in this? Why did you let Blake go do this lawsuit? Now all your friends are getting deposed.
Reynolds once told Conan O'Brien that he's learned never to apologize. But what happens when a celebrity decides accountability simply isn't part of the script? The man behind Deadpool's mask may be hiding more than just fictional scars. While Reynolds wins over fans with his sharp wit and charm, behind the scenes he's allegedly been controlling narratives, quieting dissent, and sending champagne to those he's publicly ridiculed. The same actor known for mocking others often goes silent when the scrutiny shifts his way.
I'm not trying to pile on to Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively heat. I don't hate them. I'm angry with them. I'm frustrated with them because they refuse to take accountability, and they are using their Hollywood power to just stomp on people. And then they're using people I like, Conan O'Brien, to like put out their message and make it seem like there's nothing wrong. We're still big names. And they are, sadly. They are going to be big names. But they got away with something, or so far they've gotten away with something that I'm just not okay with. And I'm going to continue to call it out. And this appearance, he said a lot of stuff that I'm just frustrated. Like, why are you out there doing this stuff? You really need the attention this badly to go out there and do a whole therapy session about your dad? It's all just so weird, which he goes into about his dad seemingly was a bully. His dad's dad was a bully. I don't think, it's too far off to say you've done some bullyish things yourself. You're revealing all this to us. So of course we're allowed to react and respond and engage.
When Ryan Reynolds sat down with Conan O'Brien on his podcast, he dropped a subtle bombshell that most fans completely missed. Around the 30-minute mark, in the middle of a seemingly lighthearted conversation, Reynolds leaned in, flashed his signature grin, and shared something that should have raised eyebrows. He's learned to never apologize. This wasn't a punchline or a passing comment. It was deliberate. Reynolds, the man celebrated as Hollywood's charming Canadian sweetheart, openly admitted that accountability isn't part of his playbook. And yet, Conan didn't bat an eye. He nodded along, never challenging the idea or pressing further. Moments later, Reynolds deflected with a quick joke. Classic misdirection. It was smooth, calculated, and it worked. That moment wasn't an outlier. It's a pattern. If you pay attention to Reynolds' public appearances, you'll notice a consistent strategy. Every time a conversation drifts toward controversy or past behavior, he pivots. Personal anecdotes, self-deprecating humor, heartwarming stories about his kids. It's all part of the charm offensive. Take his recent appearance on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. As soon as Fallon hinted at behind-the-scenes rumors, Reynolds launched into a 5-minute tale about his daughter's school play. The audience laughed, the moment passed, and the real questions were never asked. Or look at his Vanity Fair profile. When the writer brought up reported on-set tensions, Reynolds steered the conversation into a nostalgic story about growing up in Vancouver. The original question? Never revisited. This isn't just a media-savvy actor staying on brand. It's a carefully honed system. Reynolds uses humor as a shield, charm as a diversion, and relatable anecdotes as smokescreens. Over the years, he's perfected the art of staying likable while dodging accountability. The philosophy of never apologize explains a lot about Reynolds' career. When issues arise, he doesn't address them, he sidesteps them. And because his public image is so polished, most people never notice. But what makes this podcast moment with Conan so revealing is that it's not secondhand speculation. This time, the mask slipped just enough for Reynolds to confirm it himself. He doesn't dodge accountability by accident. It's a choice. And that choice isn't new. Nearly 2 decades ago, well before he reached A-list status, Reynolds was already showing signs of this pattern. It started with an incident involving public mockery, lavish gifts, and the same deflection tactics he still uses today. The smile might be genuine. The jokes might land. But behind the charm, Reynolds is playing a long game. One where avoiding blame isn't a fluke. It's a philosophy.
Really, Ryan? Come on. I liked you, Ryan. I'm so frustrated by all this. Why did you get yourself so involved in this? Why did you let Blake go do this lawsuit? Now all your friends are getting deposed. I've heard there's a lot of people in your court who are extremely frustrated by all this, and there's going to be some truths that you may not want to hear.
And it was 22 years ago, and it was such a lesson.
So he's sorry. Let me start it again. He's talking about how he's
the reason I love you is that you don't punch down. Like, it's not your vibe, and it's a good.
Oh no, I would very much like to be
the
the
best
joke.
Targets. Yes, me too. Like I've done it. I did it once in my life, and I deeply regretted it. And it was 22 years ago, and it was such a lesson they'll never forget. And
22 years ago, once was when he punched down, and he's trying to tell us he's never done it again. He did it once, 22 years ago. What's that, like 2003? Sorry, where he was not even doing anything popular. Maybe Blade Trinity was about to come out. Van Wilder had come out. That's the one time you did it, right after Van Wilder. Do you guys believe?
22 years ago, long before Deadpool made him a household name, Ryan Reynolds set the tone for how he'd handle conflict throughout his career. After publicly mocking someone at an industry event, Reynolds didn't apologize, at least not in words. Instead, he sent a lavish case of champagne to the person's hotel room. No note, no call, just an unspoken message wrapped in expensive bubbles. Asterisk, let's pretend this never happened. Asterisk, this wasn't a youthful misstep or a one-time lapse in judgment. Multiple sources confirm this champagne as apology routine has been Reynolds' go-to tactic for decades. When he crosses a line, he doesn't take responsibility. He sends alcohol. The message is unmistakable. Asterisk, I know I was out of line, but I won't say it out loud. Asterisk, witnesses at that original event recall the moment vividly. Reynolds, riding early fame from his television work, spent nearly 10 minutes joking at the expense of a lesser-known industry figure. The person wasn't even present to defend themselves. When word got back to them, there was no call, no explanation, just champagne at their door. What makes this pattern so striking is that it proves awareness. Reynolds knows he's in the wrong. Otherwise, why send anything at all? The gesture isn't about making things right. It's about deflection. Champagne offers the illusion of amends without the accountability of an actual apology. It's damage control disguised as generosity. And this is an ancient history. A producer who worked with Reynolds in 2016 received a bottle of Dom Perignon after the actor mocked his accent at a rap party. A costume designer got view of Clickwatt when Reynolds made disparaging jokes about her work. A screenwriter received a similar delivery after Reynolds allegedly rewrote their dialogue without approval. No explanation ever accompanied the gifts, just a silent, fizzy peace offering. This long-standing strategy links directly to recent claims about how Reynolds treats people behind the scenes. In each case, the same formula appears: cause harm, avoid taking responsibility, and send a high-end distraction to smooth things over. It's an image-saving maneuver that allows Reynolds to maintain his public persona as the lovable, self-effacing star, without ever confronting the truth. By sending gifts instead of making sincere apologies, Reynolds keeps his record clean. There's no quote, no admission, nothing that could chip away at his carefully curated image. What looks like generosity is really calculated self-preservation. The champagne isn't a gesture of goodwill, it's a liquid loophole, a silent deal to keep things quiet. But that system only works when people accept the gesture. When independent film director Justin Baldoni became the target of Reynolds' mockery, the usual playbook kicked in. The champagne arrived right on cue. But Baldoni didn't take the bait. He didn't laugh it off or play along, and that's when things reportedly escalated. According to sources, when Baldoni refused to participate in the silent truce, Reynolds allegedly pivoted to more aggressive tactics. Rather than apologize or engage directly, he used his platform and influence to steer the narrative in his favor. The charm offensive gave way to reputation management, and the consequences for those who don't play along became crystal clear. What started as a seemingly harmless habit of skipping apologies has grown into a larger, more troubling pattern, a refusal to be held accountable, wrapped in a bow of luxury and likability.
Said someone late night, but it was a little bit like when the comedian or the guy with the microphone starts picking on someone, you're just like, they don't have a microphone as well. It's not fair, and it's and it just that was left a mark that I'll never ever.
Yeah, you can't forget. If you think you've really hurt someone's feelings, you can't. As crazy as it sounds, and you're in comedy, if you really think you've hurt someone's feelings, unless it's Mussolini or Stalin.
Fuck! How did you know?
you have trouble. Like you can't sleep. Yeah. You wake up and you're just
wide awake. It was and the person.
So Conan, you clearly. I've met Conan, the nicest guy in the world. Doesn't want to make enemies with anybody. Plays nice to everybody. It's why I'm not mad at him here. He doesn't want to get into drama and people's drama. He's not some drama hound, clickbaiter. He just wants to have real conversations with people. And I'm sure Ryan's been good to him. That's what he sees. So yeah, he's not going to pick a side on this. I got no beef with this. But Ryan, my man, you bring this whole topic up while clearly ignoring the elephant in the room where you have punched down on Justin. Let's not forget all that you've done. And while you are clearly tense dodging this, which you are, let's start with Nice Pool. That's not punching down, my man. That had nothing to do with Justin, really. That wasn't an opportunity for you to take your biggest movie ever and use it as an opportunity to take punches down at someone lower than you, the director of that independent movie at the time, Justin Baldoni.
Justin Baldoni may not be a household name, but as the director of Nice Pool, a modest indie film, he's carved out a space in the industry built on smaller, more personal projects. In contrast, Ryan Reynolds sits at the helm of a global franchise juggernaut, backed by Marvel, Disney, and an army of fans. That vast imbalance in power is exactly what makes what happened between them so unsettling. When tensions reportedly arose between the two, Reynolds didn't resolve things privately or respectfully. Instead, he allegedly weaponized his massive platform to publicly mock Baldoni, turning a personal conflict into a one-sided spectacle. Think about the disparity for a moment. Reynolds has millions of loyal followers, corporate backing, and instant media reach. Baldoni had none of that. These weren't offhand remarks or friendly jabs. According to sources, Reynolds used interviews, press appearances, and media opportunities to take shots at Baldoni's directing style, body of work, and even personal traits, all while knowing full well that Baldoni lacked the means to respond on equal footing. It wasn't a feud. It was a public takedown from someone too big to challenge. One industry insider familiar with both productions said Baldoni was caught completely off guard. While he focused on building his film, he suddenly found himself turned into a punchline by one of Hollywood's most powerful voices. His team reportedly considered responding, but quickly realized any statement would be drowned out by Reynolds' media dominance. That's what punching down really looks like when a figure with overwhelming influence uses it against someone without the platform to push back. Reynolds could make these jokes with impunity. His connection to Marvel gave him a layer of protection few in the industry would dare challenge. Executives weren't going to reprimand the face of a billion-dollar franchise over insults aimed at an indie filmmaker. But the damage wasn't just emotional, it was professional. Multiple industry sources confirmed that potential backers began to question Baldoni's reputation in the wake of the conflict. Some even pulled support for upcoming projects, citing concerns stirred by the rumors. While Reynolds carried on with his Marvel press tour, Baldoni was left dealing with the very real consequences to his career. This situation highlights a deeply troubling pattern. When someone without the same level of power challenges Reynolds, or simply ends up in his crosshairs, he doesn't engage fairly. He uses his fame, reach, and carefully managed public image as a weapon. The charm, the humor, the champagne, it's all part of a larger strategy to control narratives and silence dissent without ever appearing at fault. And it didn't stop at public mockery. Behind the scenes, sources allege Reynolds went even further. He reportedly drafted a statement so potentially career-ending that if Baldoni and others had signed it, their reputations in the industry would have been irreparably damaged. It was a chilling reminder of how far Reynolds was allegedly willing to go to protect his image, even if it meant crushing others in the process. This isn't just about one conflict or one bad decision. It's about the calculated use of power, influence, and public goodwill to silence criticism and maintain control, regardless of the cost to those with less power to fight back.
But this is what they're trying to say. They're saying Reynolds said to Blake, I should be there. I need to shine right now. That was what apparently, and then said, you need to understand what I am saying to you right now. Now, if that's true, that sounds very bad and controlling. Blake was then pictured placing a hand on Ryan's cheek and said, kiss me one more time, which then he did, shared a kiss, and then he got up to do the speech. So we'll talk about that later today during our live. I want to go through the lip reading, so make sure you join us today live as we watch that and see, is that realistic? Do we buy it? Because I'm on the fence. What I want to talk about now, which we're also going to talk in more depth during the live, is this Marvel dispute. Now, Marvel has now responded and said, nah, we're not doing anything. We're not taking this seriously. Enough is enough. Here is Marvel's response. This is coming in from Marvel's side first. Deadpool and Wolverine features a number of different versions of the Deadpool character, including Lady Deadpool, Dogpool, Kidpool, Headpool, Nicepool. The Wayfarer parties make brief reference to Nicepool in their First Amendment complaint. Specifically, they allege that Reynolds and Lively continue to leave breadcrumbs in the campaign for mocking and bullying defendant Justin Baldoni by including Nicepool as a vicious caricature of Baldoni, and that scenes with Nicepool were intended to be a transparent and mocking portrayal of Reynolds' warped perception of Baldoni. The subpoena calls for the production of all documents and communications concerning the creation, development, modification, or portrayal of the character Nicepool from Deadpool Wolverine. It also calls for the production of all documents, communications concerning Baldoni. Marvel further understands from a notice provided by Reynolds that the RFPs call for Nicepool-related documents from Reynolds. The documents at issue are irrelevant to the resolution of the claims asserted in this case. The requested documents are particularly sensitive because they relate to the development of a character in an ongoing movie franchise. Marvel has built the success of the MCU in large part by interconnecting storylines, plots, characters across its titles, including crossover events and sequels. Whether and how such elements will appear in upcoming unreleased project is the subject of much public interest, and this information is closely guarded by Marvel. You mean like when you put all those chairs and told us about all of the characters that are appearing in the next movie?
The champagne was just the beginning. According to sources close to the production, Ryan Reynolds allegedly employed a far more alarming tactic behind the scenes, a drafted statement that insiders say was designed to protect his image at the expense of others' careers. And this wasn't a routine PR release. It was, by all accounts, career-ending. The document, reportedly pushed by Reynolds and his team, would have forced Nicepool director Justin Baldoni and several others to take full responsibility for the film's negative publicity, much of which, insiders claim, stemmed from issues caused by Reynolds himself. The statement included damaging admissions, confessions of mismanagement, unprofessional conduct, and ethical breaches, claims that sources say were entirely false. Signing it would have meant taking the fall for mistakes that weren't theirs, while clearing Reynolds of all blame. Insiders who reviewed the draft described it as career suicide. The language was so inflammatory that anyone who signed it would have jeopardized their standing in the industry permanently. Even worse, it wasn't presented as optional. Reynolds' team allegedly applied heavy pressure, leveraging his massive influence to coerce compliance. For someone like Baldoni, without Marvel-level protection or a billion-dollar franchise behind him, the implied threat was clear. Asterisk sign this, or risk everything. Asterisk the calculated nature of this move stunned those involved. This wasn't a misstep or misunderstanding. It was, according to multiple sources, a deliberate effort to shift all responsibility away from Reynolds and onto less powerful individuals. One insider with direct knowledge of the situation said studio representatives from Sony, the company backing Nicepool, intervened when they saw the document. Their warning to Baldoni and the others was unequivocal. You cannot sign this. This would destroy your careers. Even Sony recognized the gravity of the situation. The studio saw the statement not as damage control, but as a weapon, one designed to shield Reynolds' image while sacrificing the reputations of those around him. This incident exemplifies Reynolds' well-documented, never apologize approach. When faced with controversy, he didn't step forward with accountability. Instead, he allegedly tried to offload the fallout entirely. With champagne no longer sufficient to smooth things over, he escalated to a legal and reputational tactic that crossed a dangerous line. What's most disturbing is how this reflects broader Hollywood power dynamics. Reynolds could propose such a document precisely because he knew his fame insulated him. His star status gave him the authority to push something so damaging, confident that few would dare call him out publicly. And this isn't an isolated incident. Similar stories have emerged from others who've clashed with Reynolds behind the scenes. Just ask Deadpool actor TJ Miller or Deadpool director Tim Miller, two figures who had very different roles in Reynolds' rise but who've both spoken, in varying tones, about how conflicts with him can quickly turn hostile and reputationally risky. The pattern is there. When someone challenges the Reynolds narrative, the response isn't dialogue, it's deflection, coercion, or outright erasure. In the case of Nice Pool, the attempted statement didn't just seek to silence critics. It sought to rewrite reality, using Reynolds' fame as a shield and his influence as a sword. And in doing so, it exposed the dark side of a persona Hollywood has long accepted at face value.
Here everybody calls me Nice Pool. Oh my goodness, wait till you see Lady Pool. She is gorgeous.
Lady Pool was played by Blake Lively.
She just had a baby too and can't even tell. I don't think you're supposed to say that. That's okay. I identify as a feminist. Right.
There it is. That's the theory, that he was man buns and all, that this was all a knock on Justin. Now, Justin infamously had a man bun. In fact, he cut it off for charity, guys. But there he is. There's a lot of images you can see of old Justin, which, I gotta be honest, do look a little bit like man bun, Nice Pool. And the whole identify as a feminist, clearly Ryan trying to mock him and say that it's nonsense. And I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't know Justin at all, but I will say, man, this is a massively huge level of pettiness from Ryan. Now, again, if everything they're saying happened against Justin, I can understand why Ryan is upset. But feels like a weird thing to joke about if it was as serious as Blake claims. Really, to just like mock this like fake feminist in your movie as the nice guy in the film, it's all just giving me a headache as to really, was this really good for the movie? Because honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of the Nice Pool character. I thought this whole character was a weird, it's a bad part, not as funny part of the movie. And to think that Ryan, who I'm a huge fan of, was a huge fan of. Look, this whole issue, Colonel Kurtz did it really well. I haven't seen unforced errors like this since, well, Amber. However, the situation resolves. It's astounding how Blake Lively has committed huge strategic, unforced errors and turned a season of bad social media that had already resolved with the giant success of the movie, Facts, into potentially years of terrible public sentiment and online division. She no doubt thought she was dealing a death blow to Justin, but suddenly things aren't looking as smug. This is where the problem arises. This story was over. People were moving on. I think even people would have forgotten and moved on and said, oh, she was bad in those junkets, and she could have fixed it in the next round of press. But now this lawsuit, these text messages, everything that they're doing, the theories, the idea that Ryan was behind it and then put him in the movie, it was that bad. This has made what was just a stupid, I think, disagreement, some maybe uncomfortable moments on set, into something far.
TJ Miller and Tim Miller may not share much beyond a last name, but they do have one striking thing in common. Both had serious run-ins with Ryan Reynolds, and both saw the cost of stepping out of line. Their experiences, different in context but similar in consequence, draw a clear pattern that's become hard to ignore. Let's begin with TJ Miller, who played Weasel in the Deadpool films. In 2018, TJ appeared on a podcast and spoke openly about his experience working with Reynolds. He didn't mince words. He described Reynolds as horrifically mean on set and claimed the actor had changed for the worse after rising to superstardom. These weren't vague complaints. They were pointed, first-hand accounts of uncomfortable on-set behavior from one of the franchise's key supporting actors. Then, something changed, rapidly and noticeably. Within months, TJ reversed course. In new interviews, he praised Reynolds, calling him so funny, and brushed off their tension as overblown. The sudden shift was so jarring that entertainment reporters flagged the inconsistency. One moment, he was sharing detailed grievances. The next, he was offering generic compliments. So what happened in between? According to industry insiders, Reynolds' team reached out to TJ almost immediately after the negative comments went public. The details of those behind-the-scenes conversations haven't been disclosed, but the outcome is telling. TJ's tone changed overnight. He went from critic to cheerleader, all while Reynolds remained publicly silent, never addressing the initial claims, never acknowledging the conflict. Then there's Tim Miller, the director who helped make Deadpool a breakout success. After delivering one of the most profitable R-rated films in history, Tim was expected to return for the sequel. But before production even began, he was out. The official explanation was creative differences, but insiders paint a clearer picture. As Reynolds' influence grew, especially after becoming a producer, he sought more creative control. When Tim pushed back, he was removed from the franchise he helped build. Reynolds, again, controlled the story. Publicly, he downplayed the split, saying it was simply a matter of different artistic visions. But privately, it marked a clear power play. Tim, who had shepherded the original film to success, suddenly had no seat at the table. The message was clear: challenge Reynolds' vision and you're out. In both Miller's cases, Reynolds didn't engage with criticism, he erased it. TJ was reportedly pressured into walking back his comments. Tim was quietly sidelined. And in both situations, Reynolds preserved his image without ever addressing the underlying issues. Meanwhile, both men faced professional setbacks. TJ Miller's career has noticeably slowed, and Tim lost control of a billion-dollar franchise he helped bring to life. These incidents line up with what's now being recognized as the Reynolds playbook: manage the narrative, apply pressure quietly, and never publicly acknowledge wrongdoing. Whether it's through gentle coercion or strategic replacement, Reynolds has repeatedly ensured that dissent doesn't disrupt the public version of himself, the affable, self-deprecating Canadian charmer. But when you look at the Millers and then at the Baldoni situation, a fuller picture emerges. This isn't just a pattern of isolated feuds. It's a sustained strategy. The Reynolds method doesn't rely on open conflict or apology. It relies on quiet control, behind-the-scenes influence, and the power to shape perception while others absorb the fallout. The man behind Deadpool may thrive on breaking the fourth wall, but when it comes to criticism, he builds walls so high, most people never even see there was a problem to begin with.
So you mocked him, and then your apology was to send him the substance that he had successfully kicked.
Fuck me. Like, I really... And then, so that's where I got the lesson to never apologize. Never.
And if you're listening right now,
ground.
Don't apologize.
It's like, it's not funny to me because he's currently doing it. That's what's so frustrating. Typically, I would just, if I didn't know all the information, I'd laugh along with him and be like, ha ha ha, Ryan's so funny and self-depreciating. And look at him really being hard on himself. But like, listen to that story and think for a moment what he actually did there. He did punch someone down, unclear who it is, sleuthers, let's figure it out. Punch someone down and then gives him champagne. Granted, okay, I'll accept maybe that was an accident, which puts him back on the wagon. And then this whole thing is just like, oh, I never did it since. It left such a mark on me. I never wanted to do that again. Okay, let's go through. Who called Justin a thin-skinned outrage over the horrific characterization of fake feminist Nice Pool, which reports are that you did shoot later in production, Ryan. Nice Pool may have been around, but you clearly morphed him into little jokes about Justin because, you like to punch down. That is the literal definition of punching down. Justin, wasn't as famous at you at that point, and I guess had some issue with your wife, so you chose to use your biggest Marvel platform with Hugh Jackman and everything to make a whole character that makes fun of him and mocks him. But he only punched down that one time 22 years ago, guys. Why do you keep doing this, Ryan?
Ryan Reynolds' carefully curated public image is starting to crack under the weight of mounting allegations. Behind the charming smile and quick wit that fans adore lies a version of Reynolds that, according to insiders, is far less flattering. A man who uses his power to silence critics and sidestep accountability. The discrepancy between the Reynolds seen on red carpets and in viral interviews and the one described by those who've worked with him is becoming impossible to ignore. While the public sees a lovable Hollywood jokester, those without his level of influence allegedly encounter someone very different, someone willing to protect his reputation at any cost. The contrast is stark. For years, Reynolds has leaned into a nice guy persona, complete with clever banter and picture-perfect social media posts. But these stories from directors, writers, and crew members tell another story, one of control, manipulation, and an unwillingness to take responsibility when things go wrong. The question now is whether Reynolds will finally break his long-standing, never apologize rule. Because with each new account, one thing becomes clearer. The real Ryan Reynolds may not be the one fans think they know.